Marlena and David's son Ashley has autism. 15 years ago, they asked for support from mental health experts. Ashley was placed in care, but for the past 5 years, he's spent most of his days isolated and in seclusion. It's a situation they never expected. This is their plea for a review of Ashley's care.
That's my son Ashley, just coming out of the surf. He used to really love surfing at this beach. We used to spend half a day out here every day, and that was marvellous. He's our only child, and he's in a helpless situation. There's nothing he can do about it. There's nobody really who can get him out of where he is.
Political pressure in New Zealand has led to a shift from institutional care since the 1980s. But the United Nations has criticised ongoing practices of seclusion.
That's about the size of the room he's been in for the last 5 years. We're not allowed to go in there. It's sort of forbidden, mainly because of privacy issues, I believe. There's got a paranoia about being in a prison, and effectively it is one. It's a terrible situation, particularly since he's autistic. It's almost like torture to somebody like that, to be in a situation like that. So it's just unbelievable that it'll happen. This sort of thing happens in the 21st century. We have to cope. If we don't cope, then Ashley won't cope. So, yeah.
Well, seclusion is another word for solitary confinement, meaning you're locked up by yourself for 22 hours a day or more and not able to interact with another human being. And in countries around the world, nobody ever describes what they're doing as solitary confinement. It's always got different labels.
He had a very difficult birth, like 28 hours. He was just very, very quiet. And I thought, oh, this is great. Didn't know what was coming. He was having autism. He wasn't diagnosed until his teens, but he was such an anxious child. Anything new was a real challenge. He went to school. Loved the outdoors. He didn't really want to learn. He always wanted to go surfing. He'd knock on my bedroom door at 5 in the morning. "Mum, come take me surfing." And I think, oh no, but because he enjoyed it so much, I'd get up and take him out to the surf before school. Sometimes there would be ice on the sand. Yeah, very gentle, very shy, not very verbal. Loved the animals, of course. When there were baby roosters, he would insist that I help him take these roosters about 2 or 3 kilometres down through the paddock so that they wouldn't get their heads chopped off.
He loves nuts. He's so routine-driven that he's always wanting to have the same thing every day. Expects it and gets very angry and annoyed if he doesn't get it.
One thing about Ashley is he is very grateful. And so often he'll say, "Oh, Mum, you're so good. And, you really helped me." Really caring for Ashley more than most parents would for the last 20 years. So if we're routine-driven too, it's not surprising.
Yeah.
Oh, we're fine for time.
OK, good.
OK.
How do you think he'll be today?
Well, I hope he's better than he was yesterday. Tafri Matir, it's a unit for forensic patients. It's supposedly a rehabilitation unit. It's definitely long-term.
Ashley has lived here for 10 years. For the last 5, he spent much of his time locked in the seclusion area. Formal requests to film inside the facility were denied.
Five days a week we spend an hour with him. He does his watering in the garden and maybe plants a few plants that we bring along. Go for a bit of a walk around the courts, and sometimes if we're lucky enough we go down, walk down to the chapel.
Ashley is allowed to move beyond his unit for an hour or so each day. Today is a treat. His parents have permission to walk Ashley down the road outside the facility.
You often sing a song to me. What's the song?
If you go down to the woods...
No, not that one.
Here comes the sun.
Happy, happy, joy, joy.
I'm happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy.
5 years ago, before we went into seclusion, we would have half a day together, nearly every day.
Oh, Mum's a godsend.
That was really good because he could do things he really enjoyed, like about diving, surfing, a bit of trout fishing even. It was really, really great.
Hello, darling. It seems like yesterday's there. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. And I say, it's all right. I'm gonna...
Ashley, no!
Hey, it's only the bloody body.
Ashley, you're too
Hey,
excited. Shh. No. Ashley, you're too excited. Take a deep breath.
Now, come on. Here you come. Here, boy.
He has all these impulses coming in through sight and through auditory processes, and he can't make sense of them. They all come in too much of a jumble, and particularly his auditory processing. And that tallied with his reactions to loud noises, or even more than one person talking at the time is difficult for him. So if you get 2 or 3 people holding a conversation or joking together, he will feel right out of it. It disorientates him. He can't process all this information coming at the same time.
Just
quiet, Ash, just quiet.
Nice little boy, man. I went to school.
About 10, 12 years ago, when I was working for the council in Gisborne, and Ashley was going to a job centre where they looked after people with disabilities. And he came up to see me, and I was at the tea room at the time, and it was incredibly noisy. People were playing darts, and it was sort of at the end of a championship, and the noise was absolutely horrendous. He sat with me for a while, and he just got more and more agitated, and then suddenly he flew across the room and started to try and punch this work colleague. Where several of us realised what was going on. We rushed over, we grabbed him and separated him, had to send him off to the hospital. They called the police, and he ended up in seclusion. But even prior to being hospitalised, he'd always had this phobia. I don't know where it came from, but he always thought he'd end up in prison. So this psychiatrist, he said he was going to put Ashley in seclusion. And Dave queried this, and he said, oh, it will steal him up. Well, it certainly didn't steal him up. And Dave sort of argued with him, but this guy was adamant.
We love you very much.
Love you too, Mum.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Great to see you. Hey, you're doing really well.
And I think the experience of seclusion was so traumatic for him that it really made his life a lot harder.
The working group on arbitrary detention have said, following on from what a UN special rapporteur expert on torture has said, that you should never be locking up people who've got mental disorders or intellectual disabilities in solitary. And even for those people who are not disabled, the maximum anybody should be locked up is 15 days because of after 15 days it's called prolonged solitary confinement, and it can have irreversible psychological effects.
These animals deserve fair treatment like I do.
The United Nations has recommended New Zealand review this practice.
Now he's in a situation where there are loud noises, and this is the sort of thing that can set things off. It can be just 3 or 4 people talking close by. He then goes, maybe tries to assault a staff member or something, and then he gets pushed into seclusion again. And it's all to do with the environment he's in. That's what's really distressing, and no real allowance has been made for that.
During the season when people who believe in the earth get bipolar disorder. Well, bipolar disorder is for having been locked up in a cell. They say it's negative. No, I do not agree that bipolar disorder is negative.
They just keep prescribing antipsychotics and saying, you know, if we get the treatment right, then he'll come right. But it's not going to happen while he's in that environment. That's why we're so adamant that he has to get out of there.
What do you remember when you were little?
I still am a little boy. Yes, I still am a little boy. That's when I was a little boy. It took about a minute.
I see him as a young man, very much in a great struggle, just to keep himself together in some sort of way, in a way that we wouldn't really recognise. I doubt if I could have survived what he survived. So I've got a lot of admiration for him, really. You know, I just love being with him. I think the same counts for him too. We love each other in that sort of way, simple way, yeah.
Capital and Coast DHB declined our request to discuss Ashley's care and asked that footage of Ashley not be shown.
They're trying to limit his freedom of expression, and unless it's going to be dangerous to his health, I really can't see that they've got any grounds for stopping filming. I mean, I'm assuming they're frightened of legitimate criticism or media comment. It may not be criticism. What have they got to hide?
The social connectedness is so important to him, to have the right sort of people that he can trust.
And people that understand him.
Yeah, that's right. Given those people in a more normal situation, it was normal comings and goings of people.
An ordinary life.
And hopefully he can get more and more trips like that out and eventually get out to a nice place in the country where he can do that every day. Let's face it, he only does that about once a fortnight or once a week at the very most.
Yeah, if he's lucky.
I'm happy, George. Happy, George.
To lock somebody up, you normally have a psychiatrist and traditionally somebody less senior, like a psychiatric nurse. Even back in the Victorian days, we used to have 2 GPs would lock you up. We're worse off than we were then, because if it is a psychiatrist and a psychiatric nurse, there's an imbalance of power there. There's not 2 equal. So it's, in my view, too easy to lock somebody up. And then it's hard to get out.
Ashley's parents are his legal guardians, but the District Health Board now has responsibility for his care. A psychiatrist determines treatment. Seclusion is regarded as a treatment. But his parents have repeatedly tried to get Ashley a life in the community.
This is something me and you talked about last week. You know, what do we want for Ashley most?
We all agree, I think, that we want to see him in a rural environment, in a very peaceful place where he's supervised, probably 2 to 1 at least.
I'm an advocate primarily to Ashley, but most of my work is with Dave and Marlene, his parents. It's hard to not work with the person directly, but in Ashley's case, you know, his living situation is so compromised, I have to do it with his welfare guardians. He's quite able to live a good life in the community, in the right setting.
In the right setting.
So I think we need to think about how those steps out are going to eventuate.
And I think your idea of getting more volunteers down to try and take him out is something we can do pretty well straight away.
I think we'll have to think quite creatively about how we introduce people.
I guess we need to get to know the person first.
The right to freedom is a fundamental human right. Everybody takes it for granted. Can you imagine what it'd be like just be locked up in seclusion for a short period of time, a few days, let alone for years and years and years? There are many human rights violations, and many of the worst involve disabled people, but much of the public doesn't understand this.
It's not just being in a room on your own. Seclusion is supposedly low stimulus. On the one hand, it can be, if there's no other people around, it's deathly quiet. And then if you've got 3 others in that same unit and they're all screaming for 24 hours a day, it's totally unbearable.
What happens to many people is that because of some behaviour or perceived behaviour or risk within a mental health facility or a similar facility, they get placed into what's called seclusion. They might be put there to calm down, to de-escalate. There might be a locked door. But there are better ways of doing these things.
Josh Barber also has behavioural challenges. He has 24-hour care, but he lives in the community.
I've always been worried that my son, that Josh, that if something happened, that he'd be taken away from us and either put in seclusion or something like that, and we'd lose him, that we wouldn't be able to help him. Josh is in residential care with 24-hour, 7-day-a-week support because he needs that. So he's severely autistic and he's non-verbal. Actually, he can't read or write, and so he can't speak, and he has behavioural issues, quite severe at times. He can headbutt, and he has headbutted me. He has headbutted my husband. One time, when Gary said no about something, or something, he just ran straight across the room, boom, and I mean, it nearly knocked my husband out. Spectrum do a lot of outside activities, a lot of visits to the community, which is what I've always wanted. We've wanted for Josh to be able to be part of the community, because he should be. And they do really strive to do that. He's got friends. One of the boys in the house with him, they get on quite well together, and it's pretty full. Josh has got a bigger room with a rocking chair, an easy boy that he loves to stretch out in. He can play his music or put telly on, and he'll go into his room, and he loves that space. I feel that he's happy and he's safe and he's living as a fulfilled life as he can, and I think that's good.
What about seclusion? Can you tell me about that?
I don't really like being in seclusion. It's too tough on my head.
Why is he in there? Because He ended up going into the mental health system instead of into a service matched to his needs, probably a service more matched to his intellectual disability, his learning disability. He went in, and because they couldn't find a place, he became conditioned into the mental health system.
And what is your room like?
Well, I cleaned it up going about 5 days ago.
It's a cell. It's got no toilet or running water. It's got a bedpan, a bed, which is usually a plastic mattress, and nothing else. His room is where people go when they're in deep distress, or when they're being aggressive, or when they're in trauma. You know, I've experienced seclusion, but for Ashley, he's had significant periods, you know, years living in seclusion. But from my experience, for me, it was, I mean, it's like death for me. That's the only word I can really put to it. It felt like I was completely, all my choice and ability to have a voice was taken away, because you're locked in there without even the ability to get a drink of water. When you're distressed, particularly, at a time of distress makes it even more damaging. So when I've been in those situations, it is like I've died. I've had sort of death experiences, and that's what it reminds me of when I look back on it. I got out on a review, and I've got out a few times by walking out, running out, and then going back with an advocate, or going back and explaining why I left. And by doing that, I've often found that I've taken back the power of the situation.
You tell them what the plant is, Ash?
This plant's called kawakawa, and it's very good for medicinal purposes and emotional well-being.
Three times a week, Ashley is taken into the community with support workers.
Hell of a walk, that is. Yep, they did very well.
Ashley's case is just a big dark cloud. You know, he should not be living in solitary confinement. He should be living in the community and cared for.
Now there, when I was a young boy, I used to study a book on entomology. Entomology is about insects. These insects are mayflies. From, if you put a fin on a fishing line, would be a pheasant tail nymph. Yeah. So they actually, now that, if you want to know the right sort of hooks to use in this area, on the Tongariro, there's a size 14 long shank. Yep. Okay. And what else we got in here? Little teddy bears are having a lovely time today. Watch them go.
New Zealand has been examined by the United Nations on the Convention Against Torture and Ill Treatment and on the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. And both these committees have said that New Zealand can improve around its seclusion practices. We can end seclusion. We can build best practice into what we do in our mental health facilities and other facilities so that this doesn't need to happen.
The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which was a 2006 convention. New Zealand, interestingly, chaired the working group. But they haven't since then signed up to the optional protocol, which allows people to make individual complaints. So we were gung-ho how wonderful this was an advance in international law, and then we're extremely backwards about putting it into place.
And yes, out in the bush, I am very happy. Because when you're happy, you know, when you're happy, you know, when you're happy, you know, everybody's on the show. When you're happy, you know, good. Are we happy? Yes, the girls. Come on, everybody. Yes, we are very happy. We are very happy. Are you happy? We are very happy.
Let's get to the next stream.
That is rubbish. People do not leave rubbish lying around. The rubbish makes their place untidy. So they put this in the bin. Now rubbish can actually be recycled here, but that does come from the earth. Recycling is very good. I am very behind. When I was a young boy, I used to believe in cash for cans. I used to do cash for cans. I used to have a friend called Jimmy McNeil, and him and I would drive all the way to Mahia and do cash for cans, yes. And we would make we'd make money for our friends, and then we'd have enough for a can each.
I mean, he's with friends, with people he trusts and knows, and he's just having a lovely time. And he's sort of a bit over-exuberant at times, which is to be expected.
Who's a lucky boy? Oh, who's a lucky boy? Am I being selfish, am I? Couldn't have that, could we? So we can all have a cup of tea at the chapel, I reckon.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
We take your sausage roll and we go to the chapel and have a cup of tea with your sausage roll. Okay?
At the chapel.
At the chapel.
Bargain.
What he was talking about, the nymphs in the stream, pretty accurate in the type of hooks you use. And number 14 long shank hook with pheasant tail. It's all trout fishing stuff.
Oh, gee. Oh, wasn't he gorgeous? He was such a gorgeous wee fellow. He loved to dance and motorbike. I never really wanted him to be like a doctor or anything special. I just wanted him to have a very normal life, happy, contentment, I suppose, is what I wanted. To do the things that we all expect our children to do in their lives. And have a job and maybe a family, or just whatever made him happy. So that was sort of the life where Ashley was used to, out in the country, enjoying the outdoors, fresh air, and here he is now locked up in a cage. Pretty damned annoying, actually.
Where would you like to live?
In a little fishing hut.
We haven't got much time left. We have to do it. We're getting older. We would like to see him in a nice, safe, quiet environment so that he's got some chance of some sort of a life, you know. We're not expecting miracles. You can't treat autism. It's a neurological disorder. But he can be managed in a place where he's got some chance, and that's what we're hoping for.
Attitude was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.